All right, we're back with another video in this series of learning how to use spin. And this is going to be the layout that we're going to use today. And we're going to cover 8 different spins at slow speed, medium speed, and at fast speed. So let's go ahead and start off with slow speed. These are going to be about 30% power. And we're going to start off with top spin or noon at about 30% power. And we're going to see the cue ball stay parallel with that contact point off of the initial rail. Now, as we move on to 130 or top right, we're going to see the cue ball take a little bit of a spin off of that right rail and almost stay parallel, but come back a little bit more towards me. Now, 3 o'clock, our right spin is going to have a little bit more of that right spin off of that right rail. So the cue ball is going to come back more towards me and almost scratching in the side pocket. Now, bottom right is going to be very similar to right spin, but because of the bottom spin, it takes a wider angle after contact. And you can see the cue ball's path would miss the side pocket. Now, moving on to bottom spin, it's going to be very similar to top spin, but it loses speed. So it doesn't quite come back as far as top spin does. Now let's go ahead and watch the two together, top spin and bottom spin, and we can see just how similar the path is for both top spin and bottom spin. Now the slower moving ball is bottom spin and the faster moving ball is top spin. Now moving on to bottom left spin, we're going to see the cue ball take that left spin off that right rail and go up towards the left pocket. Now left spin is going to take an even more dramatic spin, especially at slow speed off of that right rail, and we'll see the cue ball head up towards that top rail. Now top left spin isn't going to be that much different than top spin, but it'll have just a little bit of left spin, so when it touches that right rail, it's going to start spinning towards the top of the table ever so slightly. So let's go ahead and see just how similar top and top left actually are. Very similar results at slow speed. Now the faster moving ball is top left. That's because it has running spin, because the spin is going in the direction of the cue ball's natural path. So now let's go ahead and bump up the speed from about 35% to about 55% power and see what happens when we use all of these different spins. All right, starting off with top spin, we're going to see the cue ball touch that right rail and then bounce back and forth from the left rail back to the right rail before settling up towards the middle of the table. Top right spin is going to grab off of that right rail and spin the ball back towards me, just narrowly missing that side pocket before ending up back over towards the right side rail. Now 3 o'clock is going to take a little bit more of a right hand turn off of that side rail and narrowly miss the side pocket on the bottom side before ending up towards the middle bottom half of the table. Bottom right spin is going to take a more dramatic spin off of that top right hand rail because the bottom spin widens the exit angle of the cue ball after it contacts this 4 ball and brings the cue ball further down the table all the way to the bottom short rail. Now, if you remember before, top spin and bottom spin had a very similar exit angle, but in this example, the bottom spin here is going to change the exit angle of the cue ball, and it brings it down towards the middle of the table this time instead of keeping it towards the top. Now bottom left spin is going to actually keep that cue ball up towards the top third of the table, just like bottom spin did earlier at slow speed. Now left spin is going to be running spin, so we're going to see a lot of movement up there at the top short rail of the table. We're actually going to touch 4 rails in total. And as always, top left spin will complete the cycle. And we're going to see that top left spin is going to create the same path as 9 o'clock, but because of the top spin, we're going to have a lot more movement. So we're going to get just a little extra juice out of that cue ball. All right, we got 8 more spins for you at high speed this time. We're going to bump it up to about 70% power. And let's see where that cue ball ends up this time.
Try not to scratch.
All right, back to top spin at about 70% power, and we're going to see that cue ball crisscross off of those long rails and stay at the top of the table just like before, but just with a little bit more action. Now, top right is going to remind me of my favorite quote, which is, "With great power comes great responsibility," such as scratching unintentionally.
Oh no.
Now, moving on to right spin at 70% power, we're going to see a lot of movement with the cue ball as it zigzags from the top down towards the bottom of the table and ending up near the bottom corner of the table. Now, bottom right's going to be even more dramatic than just right spin because the bottom spin is going to change the exit angle after we hit this 4 ball. And we're going to get that zigzag down table, but it's going to track towards the right side pocket. Now, bottom spin at 70% power, you probably guessed, is going to keep the cue ball towards the middle of the table. But is it going to remind us of that quote again? With great power comes great responsibility.
Oh no.
Now, bottom left is going to keep that cue ball up towards the top third of the table. And we're going to get a nice zig-zag back and forth before eventually just settling towards the top left-hand corner pocket. All right, left spin. We're at the top of the table, and we're using a lot of speed. What do you think is going to happen to that cue ball? With great power comes great responsibility. Stop hitting the ball so hard if you don't know where the cue ball is going to go.
Oh no.
All right, last but not least, top left at high speed. We know what happens when we use left. What's going to happen when we use top left at high speed? Just missed it that time. But now you know, and knowing's half the battle, right? Now, if you haven't yet, check out this very comprehensive video that I put together. It's very similar to this video, but it has more information about the tangent line, about running English, reverse English, inside spin, and outside spin. And if you want to watch this video next, click on the top corner of the screen. Click here if you want to watch another one of my videos.